Imagine having the power to transform your family's travel experiences, flying in luxury and staying in top tier resorts, all while spending a fraction of the points you thought you'd need. In this episode, we're joined by Kevin Zanes, the mastermind behind the Points Analyst, who uses his deep knowledge of data analytics to crack the code on points and miles. Kevin's expertise isn't just about collecting points, it's about strategically maximizing every point to unlock incredible travel opportunities. From overcoming bad Airbnb experiences to scoring amazing deals on flights and hotels, Kevin reveals how data driven strategies can take your travel game to the next level. Get ready to discover fresh insights that can elevate your approach to travel and revolutionize your own journeys. Welcome, everybody, to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast. I am your host, DeAndre Coke, and we have got an amazing guest ready for you today. However, before I introduce our guest, I want to remind you if you enjoy our content, please don't forget to subscribe as well as feel free to take a moment to leave us a rating and a review, even whether it's in Apple Podcasts or Spotify. That, as you know, helps the algorithm and helps promote us more on the travel podcast page. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Kevin Zanes. Kevin is known for his handle at the Points Analyst, and he has a background in big data and uses his knowledge of analytics to power his knowledge of points and miles. So this is a guy who has an extreme wealth of knowledge. He lives, eats, and breathes points and miles. And if you follow his content on Instagram, it is ridiculous in a good way what he's able to come up with and how he's able to make recommendations on amazing trips, amazing travel, all with using points and miles. So, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks, DeAndre. Great to be here. I don't know if anyone's going to be able to see it, but after that introduction, I'm definitely blushing a little bit here.
Well, this is, you know what, for those watching on YouTube, I think they might catch that, but that's not a problem at all. So, Kevin, I know you have the mission, right, to help people travel more for less. And that is really a big part of the Boldly Go kind of motto of revolutionizing your journey, right? Being able to do travel differently, being able to experience travel in ways that you might not have been able to do otherwise because you're either taking that kind of exotic trip but not paying the exotic prices. So before we start unpacking all the knowledge that you have there in your head, would love to get some background on where are you from, where are you currently, and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I jokingly say that the where I'm from question is a whole podcast in itself. But where I'm from is born in Washington, D.C., but I grew up overseas. So my dad worked for the State Department. And so I've actually lived in 11 different countries over the course of my life. So I am truly a third culture child is kind of the expression that they have. Where I am currently is Switzerland. So I kind of jokingly say with people that the place that everyone is dying to go to for vacations, I get to wake up every day and see out my bedroom window. So people kind of love and hate me a little bit for that aspect of it. Um, what do I do? I do this full time now. It's coming up on just about a year. I decided to take the Points Analyst full time at the kind of end of August, early September timeframe last year, and I've been doing it for a year since. But before that, I spent 17 years in data analytics at a Fortune 200 pharmaceutical company. So that's kind of where the merging of my previous professional life, and points and miles kind of came from is taking what I did at work and then applying it to the world of points and miles.
Got it. So what was that initial start from a travel standpoint, right? Because you have a background in data. Were you doing a lot of traveling for work and that's what kind of got you into the spirit of learning how you can do it more efficiently with points and miles? Or did you kind of randomly come across a blog one day? Or did you just say, hey, there's got to be something to all these people with credit cards with points? So I'm curious, what was your start? Because obviously there was some sort of trigger that's now turned this into a full-time kind of career slash lifestyle for you now.
Yeah, no, there definitely was a trigger. So my wife and I both traveled extensively. She's also lived and grew up in many countries. We've both been to over 70 countries. So we loved travel. But at the same time, we always knew we wanted a family. And we kind of had an idea about how big we wanted that family to be, but didn't truly appreciate kind of the cost of each additional child, especially from a travel perspective. And so it was around kind of 2020, 2021 when we were doing travel, hadn't found points and miles yet. And we were doing road trips in the US because we all know I go call it during the dark period. I don't know if that other word gets censored on podcasts, but we'll just
It
call it the
doesn't.
dark
You can say
period.
COVID. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
during the COVID years,
Yep.
we were doing road trips in the US and we were staying in Airbnbs and VRBOs because as a family, those were some of the most economic ways to travel. Now, the challenge was we just had so many bad experiences with Airbnbs specifically. And two of the worst experiences, and these were really the two that I, kind of wrote off Airbnb after these two experiences happened on one trip was one trip is we actually got to a house in Colorado and it was supposed to be check-in at 4. That's the contractual agreement is by 4 o'clock, you need to be able to check in. And that's, if there's not, then there's penalties. So we got there at 4, house wasn't ready. They said, we need 5 more minutes. We said, okay. So we're sitting in a car with 3 children in the back who are just drove 9 hours. They're hungry, they're tired, they're grouchy. And so we're like, okay, fine, we'll give them 5 minutes. An hour goes by. And so they're still not ready with the house. And so we complain to Airbnb. And this eventually gets down to the host. And so by this time, we've gotten into the house. And the long story short, the host doesn't like that we complained and kicks us out of the house.
Oh, wow.
So literally just kicks us out of the house. And Airbnb says, you know what? That's the host's prerogative. Nothing we can do about it. That's your problem now. So we literally got kicked out of a house in Airbnb an hour after we went into it. The
Wait,
second
so
one.
Airbnb said that because you complained that your check-in time was not met, which is a very valid complaint, even
Yep.
more so when you have 3 kids, as you mentioned, and just drove 9 hours. But right, it's not like you got there at 1 and the house wasn't ready yet. You were there ready to check in at their contractual check-in time. You did all the things you complained, which is very valid. And because you complained, the host kicked you out, and because the host kicking you out, Airbnb said was they had the ability to do.
That is correct.
That is wild. That's
Yeah.
absolutely wild.
So that was incident number one. And then incident number two was we were going up to North Dakota and we stayed in Medora, which is kind of the gateway to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, which for those of you that have not been is a massively hidden gem in the national park system. Highly recommend it. Complete side note. And we walked in and we were kind of looking around the house and, some of the sheets were a little bit dirty and that's okay. So we wanted to wash them. Well, when we opened the washer, there were a bunch of rags covered in blood in the washing machine waiting for us. And so we had to deal with that. And, after those two experiences, I'm like, Airbnb, I'm kind of done with you. And around this time, for those people that don't know, I'm not saying that I'm on a crusade to destroy Airbnb, but this is just stuff that happened coincidentally around the same time. There were a number of news articles that started talking about how Airbnb filters all of the reviews so that mostly only positive reviews get through. So they actually won't let negative reviews get posted. And we experienced that as well. And there was even an expose in Bloomberg. So again, I'm not making this up. People can go see the article that talked about how Airbnb has an entire unit of their organization whose sole purpose is to make what they call egregious problems not hit the news. And so these are things like, hosts entering when people are sleeping, and I'll leave the rest up to your imagination as to what happens after that. But it was funded by millions of dollars by Airbnb, and there was just so much bad press that went along with our own personal bad experiences that we just kind of wrote it off. So again, that's my Airbnb tirade. I'm done with that for now, I promise. So that kind of led to, okay, well, Airbnb's not great. VRBO is kind of the same thing, but we don't really want to try it, but we want to keep traveling. And so we need to find a way to travel for the same amount of time to the same types of places, but we just need to be able to do it for less because with each new child, there's becoming more and more and more expensive. And unfortunately, my salary did not increase at the same rate as the cost of my children. Um, Despite my pleas to my employer, don't you know how many children I have? I need more money. No. So we had to find a way of doing it cheaper. And again, coincidentally, around the same time, I found the worlds of points and miles through a couple of other family accounts that I was following at the time, who kind of talked about using points and miles to subsidize the cost of their vacation. So I kind of looked at it and said, yeah, okay, this sounds interesting. Like, let me see it. I followed a bunch of people. I joined a couple of groups where people were talking about this stuff. And very quickly on, I'm like, okay, I can do this. Like, I can figure this out. And very shortly thereafter, I realized that this is all just like a numbers problem. Then I was like, what do I do in my day-to-day job is basically finding hidden value or problems or gaps in numbers. And that's literally what I do all day, every day. I bet I could do the same thing for points and miles and really take this to the next level and not just figure out a way to travel the same amount that we wanted to, but actually upgrade the type of travel that we have. And so it's this weird combination of things where it's like, not only are we traveling more now, but we're also traveling, better than what we had done before. So that's kind of the magic and the power of the points and miles thing. Um, and again, my side story on that is my wife was a little bit hesitant about this whole thing. And then we took a 10-day trip down to the Andas Mayacoba in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, which is an amazing hotel. It's one of my favorite hotels, again, side plug. And my wife was like, so how much are we paying for this? This seems really nice. And I'm like, we're not paying anything. She's like, I don't understand. I'm like, well, we use the points and miles that, that thing that I've been doing on the side that you were kind of cautious about. Yeah, that we use that. And so we've taken this amazing vacation. And she's like, well, yeah, but no, seriously, like, how much did this cost us? And I'm like, not so much. She's like, okay, I kind of get it now. So you keep doing that, and I'll keep kind of enjoying the experiences that come along with your side hobby here. And then started posting about it, stuff I did, stuff I found using data analytics. People really gravitated towards that stuff, and that's kind of where the points analyst came from. And as they say, the rest is history.
That's really cool. You experienced something, you and your wife, that I hear happen a lot of times, right? And there's sometimes, like, for my fiance Taryn and myself, right? Like, I was been doing the points and miles things for close to a decade now. And when we got together, I pretty much was like, hey, you should get the Amex Platinum. And she was like, okay, cool. Right. It was just like immediately jumped in on it. But for a lot of couples, there's like this hesitance and I don't know. And this sounds like a scam and all the different things. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think you experienced the piece where it's just like, hey, just do it and let them see the results. And then once you see it, whether it's your friend, your spouse, whatever, once they go on the trip, they're going to be like, oh, wait, like, what is this we're doing? Like, how are we're business class? Like, what did you pay? Right. So I think
Yep.
you absolutely did the other trick to get the player two involved, which is just do it yourself and then let them experience the benefits and then they'll come along for the ride after that.
Yep. Exactly.
So that's super cool. So that's how the points analyst began. So I'd like to start talking. So how do you use, as you call it, data driven strategies? Right. What are some of the things that you're finding that you're seeing? Now I know. I mean, there is very simply like, hey, you can do point searches and take this business class flight that's 80,000 points
Mm-hmm.
versus 300,000 points. But do you feel like you've got an even deeper in, or you find the deals that no one's finding? Like, where do you really feel like you're pulling your data from to find the, I guess, inefficiencies would be the best word I could use to describe?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that the data exists and it's public data, so anyone has access to it, right? And so theoretically, anyone with enough time or the background in data analytics could do the same thing. So I jokingly say I'm not that special in that regards. It's just I'm the one of the first, I will say, to kind of use data analytics in a more formalized structure to, either prove or disprove, commonly held beliefs. So the first piece of analysis that I did was, either proving or disproving this kind of long held belief. When you first get into points and miles, one of the first things you hear is Chase Sapphire Preferred is the best card for beginners. And again, best. Um, and so I remember thinking about that and I said, okay, yeah, Chase is great. Like, I'll get the Chase card. And I did it too. And I opened it up. But when I fully started kind of digging into the analysis, I was like, well, is the Chase card, from a purely mathematical perspective, actually the best card for beginners? And so I ran the numbers. So I did some digging and I found the average spend for the average American by category and compared a couple of different cards. So I looked at the Chase Sapphire Preferred, I looked at the Capital One Venture, I looked at the City Premier, I looked at the Amex Gold, and I looked at the Amex Green, and I threw in some of the no annual fee ones just out of curiosity. So it was like the Chase Unlimited, the Chase Freedom Flex, and the normal Capital One Venture. Because again, what I was doing is looking at the total. So I also, not just how many points you earn, but also what gets offset in terms of annual fees and the benefits and all that stuff. So ran that analysis. Chase didn't make the top three in the analysis. And the card that won by a landslide. And it wasn't even close. And so the number one card is the Amex Gold for beginners. And it's because it has that 4X on two of the categories that are two of the top categories in people's discretionary spends. It's, restaurants and it's groceries. Again, people need to eat or they will literally die. And so the Amex Gold just blew everything else out of the water. And so that's when I started asking the question, okay, well, what other kind of nuggets can I find, hidden gems, treasures that kind of people don't necessarily talk about? And at the same time, doing an investigation of, okay, well, why are so many people recommending the Chase Sapphire Preferred as the first card? And there were two things. One, people make a lot of money off of recommending the Chase Sapphire Preferred and very little money off of recommending the Amex Gold. So there is a financial incentive that is not necessarily aligned with consumers' best interest. Number two, I'm probably going to get shut down on Instagram for that statement, but so be it. That's what the data says. Sorry, guys. So the second thing is that people really like Hyatt. Rightly so. I'm a Hyatt fan too. I love Hyatt. It's my favorite hotel brand. But people are like Hyatt. Chase transfers to Hyatt. Therefore, not only is there a financial incentive, but people's, the value that you can get out of Hyatt, which is very clear, also kind of incentivizes people to recommend that card first because you have not only the flight options, but you have the hotel options. That second one is an infinitely more valid reason to recommend the Sapphire Preferred because it gives you that flexibility between flights and hotels versus the Amex Gold, where yes, you can transfer to Marriott, you can transfer to Hilton. You will not get great value out of that. So it's pretty much only going to give you value if you transfer to flights. So that was the first piece of analysis. And that kind of triggered the whole thing of, doing the analysis. The second piece was a lot of people were talking about, I remember it was on a Facebook group somewhere. I forget which one it was, but it was saying, oh, here's the best value hotels in X city or X country. And so I was like, well, are those really the best value hotels in that country? Or is this just like, I liked this hotel, therefore it's the best value hotel? So ran the numbers, I've done this for a number of cities, like London and Paris and Tokyo and a couple of other places, and really did try to find, what is the best value. So it was looking at not just, what is the value for your points, but also looking at hotel quality, rankings, customer reviews, and all of that stuff. And lo and behold, what people were posting was not necessarily what my math, and again, I will classify that, my math was showing. And so then I just started presenting the math that I had. And people really liked that because I would show and say, here's, the number of points, here's the average cost, here's the quality rating, and here's why I think these are the best, hotels in a given city or in a given country. And again, people gravitated towards that. And so that type of analysis of churning through hotels or flights or different credit card benefits, and using data analytics. And again, the opinion may align with stuff that people are already saying, but now I actually have like data to prove or disprove some of the commonly held beliefs in the points and miles world.
So I really like that you actually kind of went in a little bit on that chase aspect and the reasons why it's recommended more so than others, especially going into that number one reason, right, which is the compensation aspect. And I resonate a lot with that because being a financial advisor, very specifically, I'm a fiduciary based financial advisor,
Mhm.
right? And so you just talked about the consumer's best interest. I'm obligated in the financial planning world to work in my client's best interest. And that's something that most people assume all financial advisors are, but they're not. And a lot of the reasons for that delineation essentially is the fact that there can be pressure to promote things that create higher compensation for the
Mhm.
advisor, right? And so this works in the points and miles world also. Now, I will say I am a Chase fan as well, right? The Chase Sapphire Preferred, I think, is a great card. I personally own the reserve. But yes, I think it's really interesting that you brought in the analytics because you're right, right? The math doesn't lie. I think if you're just saying, oh, easy to use, easy to transfer, 3x here, 3x there, that makes sense. But you are right. That 4x on groceries and dining that the gold offers is absolutely huge. And I think that probably that card should be talked about more because of that. So I really love the fact that you brought the analytics into why that card makes the most sense. Do you happen to remember what the other two cards were in the top three?
It was Amex Gold, and as a side note, and this is the fact that actually blows people's minds, the Amex Gold. Remember, I said it won by a landslide. If you take the Chase Sapphire Reserve plus either the Freedom Flex or the Freedom Unlimited, which is a great pairing of cards, the Amex Gold alone still beats those two. Side note. Um, so it was the Amex Gold, it was the Capital One Venture, and it was the City Premier for the top three.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I love the fact that you broke those out. So let me ask you this: at this stage now, with you in the points and miles world, are you still focused on applying, signing up, getting new cards? How are you racking up and acquiring your points? I know you just recently had an Instagram post that talked about how many points you typically rack up in a year. So I'm going to ask you to share what is that number? How many points do you typically generate in a year? And kind of at a high level, what's your strategy to be able to do that?
Yep, no, it's a very timely question because, like you said, I literally just posted about this. So the number is usually around between 2 and 2.5 million points per year, and this is where I jokingly say I have 4 kids. So 4 kids who are now used to traveling in luxury, sometimes business class, luxury hotels, requires a lot of points. Flights are a 1-to-1 ratio. Hotels, we now need 2 rooms minimum anywhere we go, and so you just need tons and tons of points. So I need that many points just to kind of sustain the travel that I have because of my large family. Now, the reality is that there is no like one thing. So it's just like, if you just tell me one thing, then it'll get me to 2.5 million points. Some things will get you most of the way there, but it's a combination of things that really gets you there. So the number one source of points is from sign up bonuses. And that's just the reality of anyone that plays this game. It is hands down the easiest and fastest way to accumulate a lot of points very quickly. Now, what I do maybe a little bit differently than other people is I play this at kind of a next level of sign up bonuses. And so what I talk about in the post is how, I'm not earning 1.5 million, which is the number I earn every year in sign up bonuses myself. So to do that, I would have to be opening, somewhere between 14 and 16 cards every year consistently. Now, you can do that. Now, by the way, there are 55 cards that have sign up bonuses, most of which rotate. So you can actually do that. But that's not what I do. So I play in what's called multiplayer mode. So I have 4 players in my system. So I have myself, I have my wife, I have my first business, and I have my second business. So I have 4 players that are operating with that. So when you divide that number by 4, that 1.6 million, which is the number I earn in sign up bonuses, I'm earning roughly 400,000 points per year per player. So that number now becomes much more manageable and much easier for people to attain because that is roughly 1 card per quarter, which actually sounds like a very reasonable, very easy thing for even the average person to do. And so that's where the vast majority of my points come from. Now, some of the other places that the points come from, I do have a little bit coming in from referrals from, again, family and friends. I do have an affiliate network. So most of my kind of income from affiliate and referrals comes in the form of cash, not in the form of points. I do make the exception for family members because that's just an easy way to earn points on specific cards that they're interested in. I also do a lot with buying groups. That's kind of one of my earlier claim to fames, was being really into buying groups and helping people understand them, get into them. They've lost a little bit of favor recently just because of the inability. They're not as lucrative, is the best way I can phrase it, as they used to be 2-3 years ago. So they've kind of fallen out of favor. Still a great option, especially around peak times like Black Friday or Prime Day in the summer and kind of other major holidays.
Do you mind giving a quick example of what a buying group is for the listeners that might not be familiar with that terminology?
Yes. So a buying group is basically reselling at scale. That's the easiest, simplest way to describe it. So think about it as you go to a garage sale, you buy something at the garage sale, a book for $1. You then resell that book on eBay for $10. You make $9 in profit from that resale. What buying groups do is they mostly focus on the electronics industries. And then when there are sales at various retailers like Amazon, Walmart, Target, Costco, these other retailers that carry electronics, they essentially ask the community, a large group of people, to go purchase those items on their behalf, because each of these entities has quantity limits. So you can only order, 2 iPads or 3 AirPods. And so they get all those people to buy those items when they're on sale, usually as, deeply discounted. And then that company would then resell them during non-sale periods and then be able to make the difference in the profit. So we would get reimbursed in full, ideally, for the item that we purchased. But since we used a credit card that earns points and miles, we're basically earning points and miles on our credit cards, but not actually spending any money because we're getting reimbursed, again, ideally, for the exact amount that we just purchased it for.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a pretty high level concept that I know probably most are like, yeah, that's a little too much for me to do, but that's an
It is.
interesting way to accumulate points. So I apologize for interrupting you there. I just wanted to get an idea because
No.
buying. I
It's
think
good. I always forget that not a lot of people know what buying groups are, but a lot of people are interested in it.
perfect.
Um, then there's a little bit that I do through shopping portals. It's not as much as I could be doing because, again, I'm located in Switzerland. So what I can do through shopping portals is actually very limited. But shopping portals like Rakuten or the American Airlines portal or the United portal, the Alaskan portal, Southwest, most of these major airlines have one. They're great places where when you're just doing your normal shopping, if you just do it through the portal, there's no cost. You can earn points on all those purchases. And the way that I kind of make this as easy as possible for myself is I just have all the plugins on my Google Chrome browser on my laptop. So whenever I go into a site and I want to buy something, plugin pops up and says, hey, you can earn blah, blah, blah from these different retailers. Which one do you want to activate? I activate the one that makes the most sense. And then it automatically records it and I get those points at a later period of time. But I do have to be on my laptop for that, I don't say lazy version to work. It doesn't work as well on the phone. And then the last piece is, there is this other miscellaneous bucket that it's just a bunch of stuff that I do on the side. One of the things I always like to plug, it's a little bit more of an advanced move. I like it. I think it's great. Personally, it works for me, does not work for everyone, is Basque Bank. And so for those that don't know what Basque Bank is, it is a bank, FDIC insured. So it's not just like some randos who open a bank and, are giving you credit card points and miles. It's a legitimate bank backed by the FDIC. What they do slightly differently is they have an agreement with American Airlines where when you open a savings account with them, you have the option to earn interest in the form of American Airlines miles instead of cash. And so that is a great way to passively make or earn, I should say, American Airlines miles. Now, there's 2 caveats. One, there is no compounding interest with your miles. So you do lose out on that interest of a savings account. 2, you do not earn loyalty points on your Basque Bank transactions. So loyalty points are what you use for American Airlines status. You do not get those. Otherwise, earning Platinum Elite would be the easiest thing in the world for me right now. Um, but you do earn 2.5 miles per dollar that you have in there. And with the right redemption, again, since you work in finance and I work in data, with the right redemption, you can actually get between a 10 to 15% return on your investment, which
Absolutely.
again, you don't have the compounding interest, but S&P 500 average is 8%. And doing this, you can get between 10 and 15% return on your investment. So it's a pretty good deal if you do it right. But again, it's a little bit more of an advanced play. I would not recommend this for people just starting out.
Hey, it's DeAndre here, and we're going to interrupt this episode real quick to tell you about two great opportunities for all of you. First, join our private Facebook community to connect with fellow points and miles enthusiasts, get exclusive tips and updates, as well as get your questions answered directly by me and others in the community. And if you're looking to level up your points and miles skills, we've partnered with Lux Travel Hacks to offer you 50% off their online course that will teach you all the basics you need to know to learn how to travel in business or first class, all for less than you'd pay for economy. Don't forget to use the code BOLDLYGO at checkout. You'll find all the details and links to both of these in the show notes. Now, let's get back to our episode. Yeah, I like that you brought that up. So back in episode 30, we did our mid-year update, and Taryn and I actually talked through all the cards we've opened, and we talked about the Basque Bank, which we actually did that over a year ago. So she actually opened up the Basque Bank account and did it. And the cool thing is the fact that I think we're getting something like 10,000 American miles a month, right, without doing anything,
Yep.
which is great. I'll add another benefit to this as well, because you talked about the ROI, which is, again, it's a little of a higher level play, right? But the right redemption, if you're redeeming those points for a ticket that was $5,000 to $10,000, that's going to be a
Yep.
better ROI than you would with that money invested in an actual high yield or in the S&P or whatever it may be. But going to the other aspect is the fact that the interest that you actually have, the taxes that you have to pay on the interest is much less than if that money was actually in an interest bearing account.
Yep.
And so and I'm not going to have these numbers exact, but let's just say we redeemed those points for a $10,000 worth of airfare. I think the 1099 INT, so the 1099 for interest that we got on that account for the same amount of points generated, was something like maybe $100, right? And
Yeah,
so
let's say it's really low.
it was ridiculously low. So granted, financial advisor hat here, I can't say that it is better by any means than a high yield savings account, but I think if you incorporate it, you can actually incorporate it into your overall points and miles / financial planning strategy in a pretty unique way.
Yep. And I mean, the great thing is, now that Bilt is no longer a transfer partner with American Airlines, it's a great way to passively earn American Airlines points, which are extremely valuable when used correctly, but also getting a little bit harder to earn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Kevin, I mean, you've got some refined strategies of how you're accumulating points. You said that you bring in about 2 to 2.5 million points per year, which I think would blow people's minds. But then you also made it very realistic as well, because he's like, well, I got 4 kids, so like these 4 kids have been used to the styles of the travels of luxury. You have to get 2 hotel rooms in probably most countries now with that size of a family. So I'd love to ask, what have been some just absolutely mind-blowing redemptions / destinations that you've gone on with the family, right? Like, what was been just some really top tier, like you were like, man, I can't even believe I'm doing this and I'm the one that found this deal.
Yeah, I kind of jokingly say that pretty much all of our travel falls into that. I can't believe I'm doing
I
this
feel that.
category
Yes,
right
I
now.
100% understand that.
So as a family, there's 3 hotels that really stand out for us. And it's just because the experience was so great. We had such an amazing time, great facilities, great redemptions. Again, it may not be the top tier redemptions that some people are getting, staying at the St. Regis in Bora Bora that's going for $3,000 a night or something like that. But solid redemptions, amazing hotels. So my top 3 hotels that we went to as a family were Andaz Mayakoba. So remember that one that I talked about before. Amazing property. Everyone that I've recommended to go there has loved it. Great property. I haven't been back in a while. We're really looking to go back. We've heard they've made some amazing upgrades, but incredible property. Love it. Second one, and that's a Hyatt property. So I'll also remind people which program it's from. Second one is Naka Island. It is a hotel that is in Phuket, Thailand, and not actually in Phuket. It's its own private island off the coast of Thailand, or off the coast of Phuket, excuse me. And it's this incredible hotel. It's a Marriott property. So again, I'm not just looking at Hyatt properties. I'm property independent, and it's an incredible property. It has mostly villas, so you're almost always guaranteed to get upgraded to a villa that has a private pool and a yard, and it's just an incredible, incredible property. And the best part about it for families, especially, is all the rooms are four. All the villas have allow four people per room, so that was great for us. Again, it's a private island. You take your private boat out there. Staff is incredible. GM's incredible. We've been back to that property twice. We've been to Mayakoba twice. So again, the best endorsement I can give for a hotel is I go back to it multiple times with my family.
For that one there in Naka Island, just real quick, do you need to have well, you said it's pretty easy to get upgraded. Is there a card that you have that's helping you with your Marriott status, or do you really work hard to keep your Marriott status high to be able to get added benefits with a place like that?
So it's both. What I will say is, even without status, if you send, like, everyone has these upgrade templates that they use for hotels. If you send that, I don't want to guarantee that you're going to be upgraded, but you're probably going to be upgraded. Like, they do a really good job of upgrading people. Then if you have Platinum Elite status with Marriott, you'll get upgraded almost guaranteed, and you'll be, forest facing, maybe with partial sea view. And if you have Titanium or Ambassador status, you'll probably get upgraded to the ocean view properties. My personal strategy with Marriott is I'm now going for Titanium status every year. And part of my strategy is I have both the Marriott Bonvoy Brilliant card, which is one of my favorite cards just in general for hotels. It gives me 25 nights every year towards my status, which is a great, start towards my 75 for Titanium. I also have the American Express Marriott Business card, which gives me another 15 nights status off the bat. So before I even stay in a hotel night at the beginning of the year, I'm already up to 40 nights. So I'm not trying to hit 75 nights. The reality is, when I'm trying to hit Titanium, I'm only needing to hit 35 nights because of that. Add in that Marriott normally has a promotion for 2 nights, double X nights in the beginning of the year sometime, maximize that. And so really, to get Titanium, normally I stay only about 20 nights in a hotel to hit Titanium status. I'm not staying 75.
Got it. Got it. And what was that third favorite hotel location that you stayed at?
Yes, the third favorite one is the Andas Papagayo in Costa Rica. It is a fan favorite from anyone that is a fan of Hyatt. Although I am a little bit angry at them because they used to have this super cool, super colorful bus by the pool, and they recently repainted it to like a gray color. And it just like looks so different. And I don't want to say terrible, but like compared to the previous version, it's definitely a step down. But the hotel is amazing. It's an incredible hotel. Staff is incredible. The food options that you have there are amazing. They have both the beach at the main hotel property, and they have a secondary beach at another location on the coastline that you will get a private hotel transfer via boat to the other beach location. So it's a great property with kids, great property with adults as well. So those three are probably our top ones. I would say I'm going to give a plug for a fourth one, and we actually just were at this one, but Conrad Bali in Indonesia is an incredible hotel, especially if you have kids and you have status. I think the status benefits we got there ended up being like $10,000 worth of value over the course of our 5 days there.
Wow. That's awesome. We're just in Bali. We're going to be, that episode is going to be coming out here in a couple weeks, but we actually stayed at the Alila in Seminyak using Hyatt points for a couple nights there in Bali. But I looked through all the different properties, and the Conrad there looked incredible. We couldn't squeeze it in with everything else that we had. We had a pretty packed schedule, but I'm glad to know that there's something to look forward to when we go back.
Yeah, I mean it's a great property. Like I said, with kids or without kids, you can not go wrong at that property. It's incredible property.
So how do you talking about traveling with kids? I know you've already mentioned the fact that you require multiple rooms and such. Any tips for parents that listen to the show that are like, how do I make the points and miles work with having a larger family, and I might not have all the time, resources, skill, and knowledge to rack up 2.5 million points each year? Any tips that you have for families looking to still be able to take that trip or get out more, do the luxury travel without the luxury price?
Yeah, I mean, the way that you stretch some of your points and kind of increase the value of them is a couple of things. So with airfare, so we'll just kind of talk about that. That's usually a big outlay for people in terms of points, especially those with larger families. Always try to leverage transfer bonuses. In general, I do not recommend speculatively transferring points, but for families, one of the best programs for families is the Air France KLM Flying Blue program, mostly because they have incredible value opportunities just off the bat. They then have promotional opportunities in addition to that. And for kids ages 2 to 11, they have a 25% discount on award tickets. So that's in addition to everything else. So for families, there's incredible amount of value that you can get through the Air France KLM program. Just as an example, I made a reel of this a couple months ago. I'm flying my whole family from Europe to America in business class on Air France. Again, business class the whole way for 6 people for 200,000 points.
Wow, it's incredible.
So most people, that's the number they have for one person one way. So we're doing it for 6 people. Like that's how much value the Air France KLM program has. So whenever you see those transfer bonuses to, Air France KLM, if you're a family, I'm not saying go ahead and make that speculative transfer, but if you do, you're probably going to use those points and you're probably going to get great value out of them. So, you can use those points and get, I think economy class tickets start at, they can go down to like 10, 15,000 points per person per way to Europe with Air France KLM. And then again, you have the child discount on top of that. So you can fly your whole family to Europe for 50,000 points. It does not have to be business class. You can do it for a lot cheaper. That's kind of the first recommendation is, know those programs that are going to be family friendly. Air France KLM is one of the one, or sorry, yeah, Air France KLM is one of the ones I highly recommend, is my number one recommendation for families who are looking to travel. The second thing I would say is, also know where your points and miles go further. And so I'm just going to give you an example. And I'm not going to say that this is what you should do. It's just an example for purposes of illustration. You can stay at a Park Hyatt in America, in New York, for 40,000 points. Park Hyatt New York is, their average price is 40,000 points per night. That's a lot of points, especially if you need 2 rooms, 80,000 points, right? Versus there is a Park Hyatt in Chennai, India, that goes for 5,000 points per night. Same Park Hyatt service, same Park Hyatt luxury. Yes, it's in India, so it's not going to be the same experience as being in New York City. I get that. But it's 5,000 points. So you could stay 8 nights at the Park Hyatt Chennai and you get an incredible experience. The same cost as one night in the Park Hyatt New York.
Wow.
Just an example. I did some analysis a long, long time ago about which countries actually have the lowest average point outlay. India is always one of the ones that's at the top, and Indonesia is also one where you can get incredible value. There's a lot of category 1, category 2, Hyatt properties there. You have a ton of incredible Marriott properties that are there. And this will tie into my last point is you also have a lot of IHG properties there. But when you think of IHG and you think of Holiday Inn Express, you think of the American version. Well, I am here to tell you that that version does not translate when you go to Asia. What you will, so I had this example that I told people for a lot. I used to live in Bangalore. India was one of the countries I lived in. there was a Courtyard Marriott that was right outside the office. And I remember the first time I went there, I was like, oh God, I'm going to a Courtyard Marriott. Like, this is going to be terrible. Because it's in India and it's a Courtyard. Like, how great can this be? I walked in and I'm sorry, like, I'm in the wrong place. I have entered the wrong hotel. A Courtyard Marriott in India is the equivalent of a JW Marriott in the United States. So just let that sink in, and I will receive all the hate mail coming to me for that comment. But you can get incredible value, especially in Asia, where your points will stretch a lot further. So yes, it's further to get to, but once you get there, your points in hotels will stretch a lot further, and your food cost will be a lot lower. Because that's another thing that people kind of forget about in the points and miles, whereas I got a free hotel stay. I'm like, well, did you not eat the entire time that you were at this hotel? Food cost racks up real quick. And so when you're in some of these countries like Thailand and Indonesia, your food cost is actually very, very low for very high quality food. So those are great locations to go to as a family. And my last plug is, if you are looking for, value, and if you have a family and if you're worried about fitting people in a room, the IHG program offers incredible value. You are not going to get that outsized luxury most of the time. There are some properties that you will. IHG tends to operate within a pretty low standard deviation of value. But as an example, one of the pieces of analysis that I did, because it was a question I got asked a lot, was, hey, I'm going to London. I'm a family of 4. I don't want to stay in hotel room or 2 hotel rooms. What are my options? So I came up with a list. I did all the math. I did all the numbers. I think there were roughly 80 or 90 points hotels in London. Of those, roughly 20 allowed 4 people to stay in a standard room. So again, not a suite upgrade, just a standard entry-level room. 18 of those properties were IHG properties. So IHG overseas and in Europe specifically offers incredible value, especially for families, because a lot of times you may not need to get that second room. You may be okay just getting the one room.
Yeah, ISG was one thing that we've talked about. We've talked about on this show. Because one of those cards that we opened, I think Taryn opened this year, was the IHG Premier card, and so we talked about that in the same episode 30 on our mid-year update. But also by getting that card, right, you book was it 3 nights you get the 4th free, or is it 4 you get the 5th free? I think 3 nights you get 3 nights you get the 4th free.
Thank you. You reminded me of my last point, which was IHG is book 4 nights, get the 4th night free. Marriott and Hilton, book 5 nights, get the 5th night free. So those 3 programs offer you a free night if you book on points, which is another great way to stretch the value. So when we went to Bali, we did 4 nights IHG Intercontinental. We did 5 nights Westin. We did 5 nights Andaz, and we did 5 nights Conrad in Bali. And it's because, so of those 19 nights, we ended up getting 3 free just because of the program that we used and that we booked on points.
That's awesome. That's absolutely incredible. And also, to your point about the IHG properties just being different in different places, when we were in Singapore, which was the end we went to after we went to Bali, we saw a lot of Holiday Inns in Singapore as we were looking, especially during our booking time as well. We ended up staying at a different hotel, but we saw Holiday Inns. And these Holiday Inns looked amazing, right? They looked like high-end hotels. Like they just, as you said, they're very different overseas, especially in Asia, than they are in America. So I love that you brought that point up as well. So Kevin, I want you to hit on a point that I thought was really interesting that I saw again on your Instagram that you talked about. This is something that I've never heard anyone else talk about in the points and miles world. And it was in a good way. It was in a good way.
What did I say?
You mentioned about positioning flights. And we had a whole episode dedicated on positioning flights.
Yes.
And you mentioned that if you're looking to position, you may want to look at positioning to a flight or positioning to an airport in Canada. And that's something that I did not know, nor have I seen before. And I would love to hear your analytics as to why should someone look to do a positioning flight in Canada. And I'll also ask you, just for our listeners that are maybe new, can you explain what a positioning flight is before you answer that question?
Yeah. So a positioning flight at a super high level is basically you have your home airport and you have your destination. So point A and point B. When you go and look for point deals, you're not always able to find the best deals from your home airport to your final destination. So a lot of times what people recommend is something called a positioning flight. And a positioning flight is when you go from your home airport to a secondary airport where there are better deals to your final destination. So yes, it adds a little bit of complexity and it adds a potential little bit of extra cost. But usually the idea is that the savings that you will have from a points perspective by going to that secondary airport and then to your final destination will more than offset the additional cost of getting to that destination. And this is where, for those that have the Southwest Companion Pass, this is an area where it adds a ton of value, is in those positioning flights, using that Southwest Companion Pass to get from your home airport to a secondary airport to then take advantage of a points deal that you found from that airport. So that's what a positioning flight is. And from a Canada perspective, this is really interesting. And I actually got a lot of flack for this one because everyone told me I was wrong, which was an interesting conversation to have with a number of people. But one of the things that I do, and one of the ways that I use my data analytics, is to find flights for people. And I have a subscription service that I offer, which I'm happy to talk about. But when I do that, I always am looking for these deals. And one of the things that I noticed over time is that when you look at the Canadian airports, they often had more availability than the American airports. And depending on the specific route, sometimes they even cost less points and cost less in taxes and fees. So a lot of times, if you can position to a Canadian airport, you can find better availability to where you want to go. It will sometimes cost less points and also sometimes cost you less in taxes and fees in both directions. And so there's a huge advantage to that. And I think the one market that can really, really take advantage of this is actually the Seattle market. Because, and I've actually done this one before. So in Seattle, you can get to Vancouver pretty easily. It's about a 1.5 hour to 2 hour drive, depending on where you are, from roughly downtown Seattle to where the airport is. Yes, you have to go through the border, and you usually stop for a couple minutes. It's not too bad. Again, I've done this one. But when you get to Vancouver, especially on flights to Asia, you can often find much, much better award space than you can out of the Seattle market itself. So yes, you have to do that 2 hour drive, but that would theoretically be your positioning flight. Almost, it would be your positioning drive across the border to Vancouver, and you could be able to access award flights that you wouldn't have out of the Seattle market. So that's one market where very specifically you can find incredible deals, and it's not too bad to do. Toronto and
Ontario,
Montreal are the other
Montreal.
two in Canada that you can usually find really good deals from. And then there's some like other really obscure ones, which I don't want to confuse people with. Like one time I found, it was a cash deal, but I also, because I also do cash deals a little bit. It was like a $1,500 round trip business class flight to Europe from Calgary. So it was like a ridiculous deal. Don't recommend that one too much. Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, those three, check them out. If you ever cannot find award space from either your home market or another market in the US, a lot of times those markets have it. And the other trend that I've seen linked to this is when you look at when Air France, again, coming back to a point I made earlier, does their monthly promotion awards where they offer a deeply discounted point rate on specific routes within their network. The Canadian markets, for business class specifically, usually show up 2 to 3 times more than the American markets.
So that's super interesting. And I think for the listeners out there, if you're living in an LA or a New York or an Atlanta, you likely don't have to worry about a positioning flight many times, right? Because you can find the points out of where you're going. But for someone like myself, I'm in Norfolk, Virginia, Virginia Beach area. So there's almost never a good points redemption for me to get to either Asia or Europe or any of those destinations. So typically we have to position. Usually our positioning is done to JFK, or when we went to Bali, we had to position to San Francisco, then to use our points. So I think it's really interesting. I'm actually, next time we have a flight that we need to take a long haul, I'm going to actually look at Canada and see what the options are. So I appreciate that tidbit.
Yep, my pleasure. It's definitely a unique one, but again, it's what the data showed.
So, Kevin, as we start to get in the realm of wrapping up here, I would love to ask you, what are you seeing as some current trends in the points to mile space? What do you see as shifting, changing, things that I'm not asking you to predict the future, obviously, but I'm curious what the data shares with you that's happening in the points to mile space that might be very different from when you first got into this space a few years ago.
Yeah, so I'm going to do one trend that is well known and inevitable, and one trend that I think is there's three trends I'd like to talk about, and I was actually going to make a post about this, so this will be before I make that post. You will get a firsthand sneak peek of this post. So there's three trends. Two I don't think people fully notice, and one is pretty obvious. I'll start with the obvious one, and that's just points and miles will devalue over time. It's inevitable as people look at how to profit maximize within the airlines. The routes will devalue, the sweet spots will change or vanish completely. And that's just something that everyone needs to be aware of. And that's where this whole kind of earn and burn, methodology or mantra that people have comes in, is because the reality, and you'll appreciate this being in financial services, is that points and miles are a depreciating asset. And so you need to just use them as soon as possible in a way that makes sense. So don't just use them to use them, but use them as soon as possible in a way that makes sense. Because by definition, almost, your points and miles a year from now will not be worth the same that they are today. So that's just a general trend. And again, that's nothing new. Everyone knows that. But again, I just want to call it out and be very explicit. The second trend that I've personally noticed, and it's a very interesting one to look at, is what I call in-housing of award availability. And so what I mean by that is, when you think back to 2, 3, 4 years ago and you wanted to fly Qatar Airways Q suites, American Airline usually has pretty good availability. I'm not going to say you're guaranteed to find it, but it usually had pretty good award availability. And you could usually find at least some route where you could use your American Airlines miles to fly on, Qatar and get the Q suites experience. Flash forward to today, now that Qatar has joined the Avios program, which is a sneak peek into my last point, it is almost impossible to find Qatar Airways through American Airlines now. I run the search multiple times per week. Usually I only get 20 to 30 dates across the entire Qatar Airways to North America network that have award availability through American Airlines. It almost doesn't exist. But if you are using the Avios program, you can find much better award space. So that's an example of the Avios program is in-housing all of the award availability into their own program and making it much more available through their own program versus what they're giving to partners. I think another interesting place that you've started to see this, it's not as obvious as that example, is also with United. United has also insourced a lot of, at least it feels like, their points into their own program versus making it available to partner programs. So that's something that I think is going to happen. And it's tied in with the last point that I'm going to make. And it is the slow evolution over time of what I call super point currencies or super frequent flyer programs. And so you already have a couple of these. So you look at the Avios program, which I mentioned. It's not just British Airways anymore. It's British Airways, it's Aer Lingus, it is Iberia. And yes, those three make sense because they're all under the IHG group. But now it's also Finnair, it's also Qatar. And one of my bold predictions for 2024 was that there'd be another program at least announced joining it. I could very easily see something like a Royal Jordanian or a Royal Air Maroc joining the Avios program at some point in the future. That's one example. You have the Lufthansa Miles and More program. So you already have, Lufthansa that's in it. You have Swiss that's in it. Austrian's in it. I think it's Brussels Airline is in it. There's like 2 or 3 other small regional carriers that are all in that award program. You have the Air France Flying Blue program, which obviously Air France and KLM are a part of. There's a couple of other small airlines. One of my other predictions is that SAS, once they transfer out of Star Alliance and into the Sky Team, I could very easily see SAS adopting Flying Blue, and also ITA, who had this infusion of cash from Lufthansa and will be switching over to Star Alliance. I could see them joining the Miles and More program. And the most recent one was that it was announced that Fiji Airlines will adopt the American Airlines points as their official frequent flyer currency. So you start to see these, like I said, these super airline mile currencies being created. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue into the future. So those are kind of 3 trends that I've seen in the points and miles space that people just need to be aware of.
Incredible information, Kevin. Incredible knowledge. And I love that type of forecasting as well as you look. I know those of us that track data, Grant, I'm in the financial markets more so tracking the data, but those that track the data, right, we can kind of see what's coming down in the future as best as we can possibly predict. So before we wrap up, Kevin, you've just mentioned some incredible trips you've taken as a family. I'd love to hear what else is on the docket for you guys coming up that you're super excited about, or any bucket list destinations or locations. I mean, you and your wife, you said, have been to 70 countries. So I know there's probably many that you've already checked off, but what else is on the list for the future here, near future?
So from an airline perspective, I have a scheduled flight on the new Japan Airlines A350-1000 in first class. So hopefully I'll be able to take that before the end of the year. But most of the end of the year from a travel perspective for me is just going to a lot of the conferences. So a lot of these conferences and points and miles tend to take place between September and December. So I just have a number of those types of conferences. I am trying to squeeze in a trip to Nepal and Bhutan between some of those conferences. The aforementioned Qatar Airways is being a little bit stingy with their award space around the dates that I need. So that trip is definitely going to be a game time decision, depending on if I can find the relevant award space or not.
I feel privileged because we're going back to the Maldives here in a couple of months, and we actually are flying Q suites, and we found Q suites with our American Airlines miles. So I
Congratulations. You are definitely the exception.
yeah, I mean that was a few months ago that we booked that, but when I found it, I was so excited because I've been trying to get on Q suites for a while. Are you going to be at the Travel More conference by chance?
I will be there. Yes.
Oh, very cool. Well, we'll get to meet in person. Terry and I will be there, so we'll be meeting a lot of other points and miles enthusiasts there in the Dallas
Love
area.
it.
Yeah, so
Looking forward
super
to meeting
cool.
in person then.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, this has been fantastic. I'd love, before we wrap up here, where can the listeners follow you? I know you do have a subscription service as well. Would love to hear all the things that you can, where people can connect with you, or you can provide them with value as well.
Yeah, my 2 main kind of platforms from a social media perspective are, on Instagram at thepointsanalyst.com is where people can find me. There's also a blog that I run and have started to put a little bit more effort into recently. It's thepointsanalyst.com. So those are the 2 main places that people can find me. I also have a subscription service for people who are interested in first and business class award redemptions. And basically, it is a near daily alert where I go and I find business class and first class award space using some of the technology stacks that I've built, and then package it up and send it out to readers. Then it goes over when the award space is, how many seats are available, what planes you're flying, what the experience is. It's all the details you need to make that booking and hopefully make that kind of once thought impossible trip into a reality. So that's just a service that I offer. There is a free version and there is a paid version. So even if you don't want to sign up for the paid version, definitely sign up for the free version. There's still a lot of value that you can get from that one as well.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Before we go, two last things. One, who else should we have on the show? And I forgot to mention that back in episode 28, it was Kelly who was the Points and Miles doc. We had a great conversation with her. She's the one that plugged you and said that you were a wealth of knowledge, and she was not wrong. And so super excited that we've been able to have you on the show today. But who else should we invite and share their story and their knowledge with our listeners too?
Yeah, I tend to skew towards people that are, traveling a little bit more luxury, because I am curious to see what they're doing and their experiences. So two accounts that I definitely follow very religiously. One is the Miles couple. They recently have blown up on Instagram. They've been absolutely crushing it. Some of their flights have just been truly incredible experiences, and they're just knocking it out of the park with their kind of luxury travel aspect. And one of my other good friends is the guy who runs Find Flights for Me. His Instagram account is incredible. Anyone that's interested in first and business class flights definitely needs to follow his account. And he's also just a wealth of knowledge with a sprinkling of mystery, is what I like to call it.
Very cool. Kevin, before we wrap this up, any other final thoughts that you wanted to leave with our listeners?
I mean, I just think that the great thing about Points and Miles is there is no right way to do it. And that if you're interested in getting in, you don't have to go all in like I did. You don't have to go as hard as I do. You can take it at your own pace, at your own style. You do not have to stay at luxury hotels. You do not have to fly business class. And that's the most beautiful thing about this hobby, is that there is a version of this for literally anyone in the world. And it really just takes jumping in, trying it out, and just starting with your first card and just putting your everyday expenses on it to get that first experience. And I kind of guarantee once you get that first experience, you're going to be hooked. Doesn't need to be hooked in a hard way, but you'll be hooked, and you'll be looking at how to earn that next sign-up bonus and take that next trip.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the knowledge, the tips, the strategies, and the recommendations on great destinations to stay, the tips for the family, and everything else. So really, really appreciative of your time today on this episode.
No, it's been great being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for the listeners, if you love the knowledge that Kevin brought, please make sure to give him a follow and check out his site so that you can secure those travel deals direct to your inbox as well. And if you find those valuable, go ahead and subscribe for the paid for version. I know that you're going to get a lot of value with, as you can see, Kevin's level of knowledge and his analytics using data to drive the Points and Miles world. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. Tell your friends, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Revolutionizing Your Journey podcast, brought to you by Boldly Go. Hit that follow button so you don't miss out on new episodes. For deeper insights and to level up your travel game with our strategies, make sure to follow us on our social media platforms and sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop. Head over to www.boldlygo.world to learn more. As DeAndre is not operating through this podcast as a fiduciary and/or financial advisor, this should not be considered personal financial advice. The information covered and posted has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The strategies and results referenced on this site, while proven, are not guaranteed. While most who apply the principles referenced will achieve similar results, you may not yourself. Your results will vary and depend on many factors that may be in or out of your control, but include factors such as your credit score, financial status, business experience, etc. It is your responsibility to consume and implement these recommendations at your own risk. We cannot be held responsible for any failure to do so.